When I was in high school, we lived in the province where life was quiet and simple. Our house was right by the main road, but behind it was a big, thick forest. The forest felt creepy most of the time, with huge old trees that seemed to touch the sky. At night, it was even worse since the only light came from the moon, making the shadows even darker. Even though the forest was spooky, we used it as a shortcut to get to school. It was just part of our daily routine, and we eventually got used to it. But the elders in the village would always remind us to show respect whenever we passed through. They'd tell us to say, Tabi-Tabi Po, a polite way of asking spirits for permission to pass, like saying, "Excuse me, I don't mean any harm." Of course, as kids, we didn't pay much attention to these warnings. We thought they were just old folks trying to scare us. One afternoon, on our way home from school, my classmates and I were laughing loudly, joking about ghosts, and trying to scare each other. But my brother remained quiet, as usual. He was always quieter than most kids his age, though he had a really bad temper. Halfway through the forest, I noticed my brother was missing. Panicked, I asked everyone to help me look for him. We spread out and even walked back about half a mile, calling out his name. After almost an hour of searching, we finally found him standing in front of a big, old, creepy tree. The tree was enormous, with thick roots and a large hollow in its trunk. We tried calling out to him, but he didn't respond. He just kept staring into the hole, as if something had his full attention. I was annoyed because I had to walk over to where he was standing, which was about 30 meters away. The terrain was tough, with thick bushes and large rocks making it difficult to navigate. When I finally reached him, I asked, "What are you doing?" He calmly replied, "There's a man inviting me to go inside and play." Hearing that sent shivers down my spine, but I stayed calm. I told him we needed to go home because it was getting dark. He reluctantly agreed, and we walked back together. When we got home, I told my mother what had happened. My mother was furious with me, saying that as the older sibling, I was responsible for my little brother's safety. I got a little upset too and told her it wasn't my fault, but she didn't want to hear it. A few days later, I started noticing something unusual about my brother. At school, he seemed eager to go home, always restless by the time the day ended. As soon as we got home, he would immediately head to our backyard. This became his daily routine, and my curiosity eventually got the better of me. One day, I decided to follow him to see what he was up to. I found him in the backyard, smiling and jumping around like he was playing with someone. I asked him, "What are you doing?" He cheerfully replied, "I'm playing with my friends." But I didn't see anyone. I laughed it off and jokingly said, "You're too young to be going crazy." Over the next few days, the same thing kept happening. I figured he just had an imaginary friend and thought nothing more of it. One evening, as we were getting ready for bed, I noticed something strange. My brother wasn't in the room. This was unusual because he was usually the first to fall asleep. I had a hunch and decided to check the backyard, and sure enough, I saw him heading outside. I grabbed him and pulled him back inside. "It's too late to be playing outside," I told him firmly. He didn't argue or even say a word. Instead, he went straight to bed without a fuss, leaving me wondering what was really going on. Later that evening, I woke up because I had to use the bathroom. Out of habit, I glanced over at my brother's bed, and to my shock, it was empty. Panic immediately set in. I rushed to wake my mom and dad, telling them what happened. Their faces mirrored my panic as they tried to figure out where he could be. "I think I know where he is," I said. Without waiting for a reply, I bolted out of the house, heading straight for the forest. My parents followed, but I ran ahead as fast as I could. Adrenaline pumped through me so much that I barely felt the scratches from the rocks and bushes in my path. When I finally reached him, he was standing by that same old, creepy tree. I grabbed his hand and tried to pull him away, but he resisted. "They're offering me food," he said, his voice calm but unsettling. "There's no one here," I shouted, confused and terrified. "They are here," he whispered, looking directly past me. "They're looking at you now. And they're angry." I froze as an eerie chill ran through the air. It felt like a presence was closing in around us. My instincts screamed at me that if I didn't act now, I might never see my brother again. Ignoring his protests, I picked him up in my arms, surprisingly easily considering his weight, and sprinted away as fast as I could. When we got home, we made him promise to never do that again. My parents scolded him, telling him how dangerous it was and how much they worried. But what he said next sent shivers down my spine and left me speechless. "They didn't just want me," my brother said. "They wanted to play with you, too." After that night, my parents made sure we never entered that forest again. They would go and pick us up every day after school. A few months later, we packed up and moved to a big city, leaving the forest and its haunting memories behind